and I am excited to welcome you all to this wonderful event as we end a series of events that we've had for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. The Dean of Students Equity and Inclusion Office has been open since January, and since then we have been on the move. We celebrated a wonderful month of celebrations throughout February, celebrating Black History Month and all of the contributions and initiatives that we have created for that month of February. March, we celebrated Women's History Month with so many different events and panel discussions representing and celebrating the efforts of women across the country and the globe. And this month, we are recognizing and celebrating and remembering those who are survivors of sexual awareness of sexual assault, and also those who are not survivors or who did not survive sexual assault, right? Lift those together, those folks together in unity and in power. As a school who recognizes the power of prayer and also the power of our faith, I would like to invite y'all to just join with me in a quick prayer as we pray for the victims of sexual assault and abuse, and remembering those who are still in the fight and those who are survivors. We take a moment of silence to remember those folks. Our mother of sorrows, you wept as your son's body was wounded and scarred. Together with you, grieve alongside children and adults who are victims of sexual abuse. We lament the trust that we have been betrayed and the wounds of body, mind, and soul that suffer. Holy Mary, Mother of God, sorrow, anger, confusion, and disbelief to the altar of your Son, Jesus. Pray for us as we seek transformative love and guidance to purify this campus and world and heal all who suffer with these wounds. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Tate. Of course, you always share such beautiful sentiments. So I appreciate you. My name is Brooke Berry, and I'm the Dean of Students Equity and Inclusion here at Marymount. I am delighted to present our speaker this evening. Dr. Monekka Munroe is a graduate of Florida A&M University and Nova Southeastern University. She currently serves as the Criminal Justice Department Chair at Virginia Union University. She has written 4 books and recently wrote a chapter for the criminal justice textbook, The Disparate Treatment of Black Youth in the Juvenile Justice System. Chapter 14, The Acceptance of Rape, Cultural, and Sexual Violence Against Black Girls in Athletics and Entertainment. In writing this chapter, Dr. Munroe aims to bring awareness about an issue that is often overlooked, disrespected, and swept under the rug. She brings attention to the trauma that causes Black girl magic to be hidden behind walls of guilt, shame, self-doubt, and addiction. She is an advocate for the psychological and spiritual health of women, believes our life's journey opens the door to success for the next generation. Dr. Munroe lives by the personal mantra, I'm fabulous, and encourages self-affirmation, self-acceptance, and self-respect in all that she undertakes. I invite and encourage all of you to find her TEDx talk in which she shares more about her personal journey in her hilarious yet soul-stirring style that is unique to her. I am just so thrilled to have Dr. Munroe. She is wonderful, she's fabulous, and I'm looking forward to all the insight that she's willing to share with our community today. Thank you, Dr. Munroe.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you so much for this invitation. And as you stated, you know, that area of research is just so incredibly important to me because of my own personal history of being sexually abused as a child and not understanding the ramifications behind not telling not reaching out to outside resources to help me understand that the trials that I went through to try to get better, they could have been avoided. But I just thought it was a part of the process when actually it really wasn't. So before we get into that, I just want to give a little history about myself so that we can all understand how I arrived at this place, right? So I am originally from Florida, and I've been in Virginia about 5 years, right? So my life's journey, I thought, was to become an elementary school teacher. That was my thing. I wanted to save little kids through the classroom. And the reason I focused on that was because of my own experiences from elementary through high school. So during those times, I was labeled as mentally retarded. So I thought it was a true thing because the adults said it had to be true. So I did start to respond in ways that would kind of confirm what that label was, okay? And then graduating from high school, I ended up, don't know how they allowed me to graduate from high school. I still think it was a mistake, but graduated from high school, reading on a 4th grade level. And so when you're in these special education classes, college recruiters don't go to those classrooms, you know, and I think that is a practice that needs to stop. It does, because academically, when a child doesn't do well, to me, that is not a strong indicator that they're not college material, because we don't know why the child isn't doing well. We look at what's going on, but we hardly ask why. You know, we look at the current situation, we write notes, we assign the labels, but we don't ask why. What is going on? How did this child get there? And that's what happened with me. So college recruiters didn't come to any of the classrooms where I was assigned because, again, they were for special education children. Again, my label, unfortunately, was mentally retarded. So, of course, they didn't think that I would end up going to college. And the danger in that type of thinking for an educator is that thought is projected into the spirit of the child. So what you think the child is capable of doing, that child will think. What you think that child cannot do, that child will also think that he or she cannot do. And that is the spirit that I carried with me for many, many years. So graduating from high school, I did what most girls my age did at that time. We didn't apply for jobs because, again, I was barely reading, right? So I ended up being homeless. I was on the streets for a few months. I did things that you do when you're desperate. You do things when you're hungry. You do things when you're cold, when you need a place to lay your head. And I'm not proud of those things, but I'm also not ashamed of those things because that is a part of my life. It is a part of who I was. It is the things that made me into the woman I am today. So I can't be ashamed of pieces of me and be proud of other parts of me. I have to accept and embrace it all, and I do. It's what I did, it's who I was. And again, had it not been for those experiences, I can't claim to be the woman I am today. All of those things were not good things. They just weren't. I did things, again, that you do when you think you don't have a choice. And at that time, I thought I did not have a choice. Well, it was a group of us. It was 4 girls, right? 4 friends. And after being out there for so long, we became desperate in another way. And our out of the situation was to commit suicide. That's what we said we were going to do that. we were young girls, 17, 18. We didn't know what to do. There was no one to help us without asking for something in return that we just weren't willing to give. And so we just didn't know. We didn't know any other way. And one of the four, she committed suicide. Our second friend, she died from complications of HIV and AIDS. The third friend is still at home and she's still in the streets addicted to drugs. She's been like that since we left high school. And she just couldn't fight her way out. She couldn't. And I'm the fourth person. I'm here. But I think I'm here not because there was a separate anointing over my life. I refuse to believe that. I think I'm here because I was pregnant. When I was on the street, I got pregnant and I thought it was the stomach flu. And I talk a little bit about that experience in my TED Talk. And when we were at the emergency room and we found out I was not sick with the stomach flu, I was pregnant. And the doctors were very concerned about this young girl being pregnant because I was so sick and I was throwing up this yellow stuff, right? And so I didn't know what it was, but the doctors explained it was the lining of my stomach because there was nothing in there. There was no food, there was no nutrients. But the doctor didn't know I just came off the street. He just saw this young girl. She's pregnant. We got to, get you on some vitamins. We need to get you into a doctor. I couldn't afford any of that. So I ended up leaving the hospital. But in the end, my mother found out I was in the street pregnant. She found me out there and took me back home. Now, again, that wasn't the best place for me. That was the household where I experienced a lot of the sexual abuse, physical and psychological abuse, but I was so afraid to give birth to a child in the street. So for that moment, I had to accept that shelter to bring this child into the world. And so I did that. And I wanted better for her. I wanted better for my daughter. And I wanted to get out of that house. And so I just kept doing little things that I thought would help my daughter. I didn't see the connection of helping me. I didn't want my daughter to go through what I went through. So as my daughter got a little older, I would teach her little math concepts, the simple stuff, 1 + 1, 2 + 2, the things that I knew, right? I didn't realize I was teaching me. I just didn't. My whole premise was I don't want my daughter to go to school and be called names. I don't want my daughter to be labeled in a way where she feels bad about herself, so much so that the energy that she would need to try to be successful would be depleted from her. I did not want that for my daughter. And so I started applying for little jobs, working in clothing stores at the mall, secured a couple of those jobs. And as my daughter got a little older, I remember I applied for a job at Shands Hospital, working as a clerk. And I'm looking at all of these individuals. It was a teaching hospital. I was at the dental clinic, and all of these young people are in college. And the conversation started. Why aren't you in college? What are you doing here? And I'm a single parent. That was always my hashtag. I'm a single mom, as if that was a handicap, right? And then they kept saying, well, you might need to look into college, but I couldn't tell them. I could hardly read. That's not my thing. I can't do that. I can do some other stuff, but I can't go to college and open a book and not understand what I'm looking at. And I was ashamed of that. And then I talked with a counselor at a community college, and I shared everything. And I started taking some college courses and ended up doing really well. Moved out of my mom's home, and my daughter and I were living in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath trailer, lived in a trailer park. And the desire to go to what I called a real college, it was just nagging at me. I couldn't get rid of that feeling. So I started wondering, is it possible that maybe I'm smarter than people told me? Could they have been wrong? Could they have lied to me? And is it okay for me to think outside of that box that I was placed in and try to come up with a life that would be beneficial for me and my daughter? You know, I had these weird thoughts, right? And so at age 28, I took a chance. I moved away from Gainesville, Florida to Tallahassee, Florida. I enrolled at Florida A&M University, FAMU, and I was doing really well as a college student and a single mom. I surprised myself. And so I just knew I was going to be an elementary school teacher. That was my thing, because here I am in college, but everyone said that I was mentally retarded, but I'm in college. So suppose other little children are being told the same thing. Well, if I can become an elementary school teacher, I can stop some of those bad messages, right? I can start pouring into the souls of these children, and hopefully they can see the success in themselves the way that I did. That was my goal. But God had a different plan for me. And I disagreed with him, but you know God, right? You can fight him all you want, but you're gonna lose, so you may as well accept what he has, right? And I lost the fight. I wanted to be a teacher for little kids. God wanted me to fight for those who were incarcerated. And how did I get on that track from elementary education? Well, I was arrested. I was arrested while I was in college. I was charged with a 3rd-degree felony. And I was arrested while I was driving my car with my daughter. And the police officer pulled me over for a broken tail light, ran my name. There was a warrant for my arrest, and he arrested me on the side of the road and would not let me call anyone to take my daughter, would not arrange for me to have my car towed. It was a very enlightening experience, okay? And this is where God was speaking to me. When I was in the jail, wondering where my daughter was, who can I call to bail me out, trying to understand this charge, scared that I'm gonna go to prison. When I was bonded out, before I walked out of the cell, there was an elderly Black lady in that cell. And she said to me, "Don't forget about us." Now, in my mind, I'm thinking that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm forgetting all of y'all, because I got to figure out how I'm in college. I'm being charged with a felony. How am I going to get a job with a felony? It was so much on my mind. Of course, I was going to forget about her, or so I thought. But that was God speaking to me. That's the fight he wanted me to join. That was the population of people he wanted me to stand, speak out loud, fight for, and remember that they have a life that people should recognize. No matter what the crime is, they're still human beings. So I went through my trial for about a year. And in the end, after the prosecuting attorney said she was willing to offer me a plea deal of 5 years in prison, I wanted to be just like her. Now, I know that's kind of insane. She was trying to send me to prison, but I'm looking at her like, that's a bad chick. I want to be like her one day. Now, anybody else would have been sitting there in the court saying, this woman trying to send you to prison for 5 years and you have a child. but not me. But again, I was told early on that my mind was different, right? So that kind of fell in line with my thought process. And so I shouldn't have been shocked at all. But in the end, I ended up being given a new plea deal thanks to the judge stepping in and saying, we're not sending her to prison. She's in school. She's trying to raise her child. You all need to come up with another deal. And they did. So the other deal was 2 years on probation. I had to pay some money back, and I had to do some community service. And so the community service for me was volunteering at the local jail where I was an inmate. Went back to school. It was too late for me to change my major. So I graduated with my degree in elementary education, but I went back for a master's degree in criminal justice. Before I graduated with my bachelor's, it was just enough time to enroll as a criminal justice minor. So now I'm learning a lot about the criminal justice system that I had no idea. And went back for my master's degree, still working at the jail. But at the time I was working at the jail, I was a contractor. So I was able to create my own contract to go back and work at the jail and get paid to do the same thing that I was volunteering my services to do. And a lot of the ladies who they worked there as correctional officers, they remembered me when I was an inmate there. And some of the male correctional officers also still work there. And they weren't very kind to me while I was in the jail. But when I returned, they didn't remember I was the same woman because I looked different, but they looked the same to me. And so I made sure they remembered who I was and how they treated me. And I also made sure that everyone there knew that I was there primarily to be an advocate for the individuals who were incarcerated at that jail. I eventually started teaching at some of the local prisons. That master's degree in criminal justice qualified me to become a criminal justice professor at FAMU. And so in doing so, I decided to start writing books. I started doing appearances at other universities, particularly criminal justice programs, to speak out about the injustices that were occurring behind the prison walls, particularly those injustices relating to women. There are so many women who are being raped in prison when that's not a part of the prison sentence. Being beat is not a part of the prison sentence. Doing the time is your prison sentence. But there are so many other things going on behind those walls that people just have no idea. And even what I found is, even when people are aware of what's going on, because so many people have this perception of prisoners, of inmates, they don't really think that it's a big deal. And that's why I said earlier, they're still individuals, they're still people. And everybody who's in prison did not commit a crime. And that's some of the flaws with the criminal justice system in the United States. If someone points at you and said, he did it or she did it, you will be arrested. And when you are arrested, that is what creates your criminal record. It's not going to court and being found guilty or not guilty. The criminal record was created when you were arrested. So when you go to court, that judge, that prosecuting attorney already knows who you are, what you were charged with, and they know that because they have your criminal record. So if you're the wrong person, but you don't have enough money for a private attorney, it's a chance you can go to prison for something you did not do. And when we're talking about rape and sexual violence against women, 70% of the women who are incarcerated have a history of being sexually abused as a child. 70%. That is over half of the individuals on the compound. 70% is a large number of women who were harmed sexually as children and did not get the protection or the help to help them to overcome those horrors, those barriers. And then if you look at a child who's being abused that way at home, how can they go to school and learn about biology? How can they sit in a classroom and learn about physics? They can't. Their mind is consumed with chaos, trying to process, trying to understand what has happened to them. And remember, when we're looking at brain development, you know, our brain isn't fully developed until we're at least 25. So a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, even a 16-year-old does not have what it takes mentally to process this thing fully. So you do things to help you cope. Some of those things could be drugs. Some of those things could be alcohol. Some of those things could include running away from the home where you were abused, having associations with other people who may not have healthy relationships, but because you're so desperate to get out of that bad situation, you link up with those people anyway, and you start doing some of the same things that they're doing, including some criminal behavior. And in the end, you're arrested, and now you're either incarcerated or you're out on bail, but you still have that criminal record that most times will not go away, because it's not like a credit report. After 7 years, that criminal record does not go away. It's with you for life. So when we look at things such as rape and sexual violence, especially when we're looking at children, there are just so many things that needs to be taken into this particular situation, such as the research shows that 90% of the offenders are known to the children. And so when I have parenting workshops and we talk about things such as this, I always try to caution parents about this. When you're talking with your children, make sure you don't focus too much on strangers, because it's not the strangers. It's people you know, it's people your children know. We're talking about teachers. We're talking about religious leaders. We're talking about coaches, little league coaches, softball coaches, basketball, football. We're talking about people your children know. We're talking about family members. We're talking about a spouse, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin. These are people we know. But when we're talking about dangers with our children, the first thing we talk about are strangers. If a stranger touch you, make sure you tell mommy immediately. But you did not talk to your child about the favorite uncle in the family. And children, as resilient as they are, children are extremely loyal. Children are very loyal. They're even loyal to their abusers. And children are very loyal to the love they have for a mom or a dad. When we look at research and case studies in particular, where these children say, well, I didn't tell my mom because I didn't want her to be sad. I didn't want my mom to be hurt. I didn't want my mom to be angry. I didn't want him to make me and my mom move out of the house. We wouldn't have anywhere to go. So I had to endure the rapes. These are children. Again, the loyalty that they have for their mom, their dad, will fool them into thinking this is what I have to do for now. So when we're looking at topics such as this, and I wrote specifically about the acceptance of rape culture and sexual violence in entertainment and athletics with Black women and girls, only because this isn't a new phenomenon. Everybody was aware with Robert R. Kelly, you know, when those stories came out about a lot of the young girls he was sexually involved with, some of them he was holding captive in his home. And then when we look at the broader scope, all of these people who knew about it, the road managers knew about it. Some of the parents knew about it. Some of his friends even admitted, we walked in on him having a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old girl, a 50. They saw this and they just turned around and walked away. And now that these girls are older, they're suffering mentally, because they don't know what to do with all of this confusion, this chaos that's happening in their minds. And then if you come from a community where every rap song, every video shows young Black girls, young Black women who are overly sexualized, somebody's going to start to think perhaps this is normal. This is the normal, natural behavior. It's what happens. And then, especially in the Black community, you know, there's always talk about the body type of young Black girls, the size of her buttocks, the size of her hips. The broader her hips are, we call that baby making hips. But that's not a compliment. And that's definitely not something that should be said to a 12-year-old girl. We should be preparing her for middle school, for high school, talking about college. What type of career are you interested in? There shouldn't be any sexual conversations happening with a child. Never, it's never an excuse for that, ever. But again, it's not something new. In the chapter that I wrote, I specifically touched on a young African girl by the name of Sarah Bartman. I don't know if any of you are familiar with her, but Miss Bartman came from South Africa, I believe, and the tribe, they were known for their body size, their buttocks in particular. Well, someone from Great Britain came and saw her, and they took her. They put her on display. People came to the circus to see her. She was also showcased in a cage. This was in the 1700s, okay? She was in a cage. Men paid to rape this woman. And so the individuals kept passing her off to different men, parading her from city to city, state to state, making money off of this woman based on her body. And so when we look now today, and I'm talking about right now, 2021, when I see young girls, for example, taking pictures, and you know, in our day, we took pictures with our face towards the camera. Well, today it's a different type of picture. Now we have young girls, they'll turn their backside to face the camera. But again, in 2021, that should not be the message, because there's so much more to women. There's so much more to young girls than our body, the way that our body looks. And now, if your body doesn't look a certain way, certain girls are body shamed. Some young women are so desperate to look a certain way that they are having someone to inject these deadly materials into their bodies to get a bigger buttock, to make their lips a little more plump. And they're dying because of this. But again, if we go back to what was happening in South Africa in the 1700s, specifically for Sarah Bartman, it was 1789. And here we are in 2021, and these things are still being promoted. They're being embraced as this is what you have to look like in order to be accepted. no matter your age, or this is what you have to do in order to be liked. This is what you have to do to protect your family. And we're talking again, not only 16 and 17, we're talking 5, 6, 7. Some of the case studies that I've reviewed, they're horrendous. I don't know if any of you heard about the, I believe, 6-year-old girl that was seen on the video because she was in her elementary school classroom. It was virtual. It was during the pandemic. And her cousin, an older boy, was home with her. And he didn't realize that camera was still on. And he made that little girl perform oral sex on him in front of that teacher. And there were other elementary school children watching that. And of course, the teacher was stunned. The teacher, the principal, they all shut down the video feed, called the police, called the parents, went to the house immediately. The boy was arrested and the little girl was taken. But again, that wasn't the first time that happened. And she was only 6 years old. Only 6 years old. And then if we look into, unfortunately, how some people view outside tools to get better, such as mental health counseling, if we keep shunning that, turning a blind eye to that idea, a lot more than 70% of the young ladies who are in prison, a lot more than 70% will be raped, molested, sexually violated. We're looking at 80%, 85%. And that's stunning to me because with the awareness that we have now, all of the research, I mean, our phones, well, your phones, everything you need is in the palm of your hand. And the reason I say your phone, and again, I'm not embarrassed, is because I still have a flip phone. My phone don't do everything Miss Brooke's phone does. It never will. But all of the information that is right there, literally at our fingertips, that 70%, it should be decreasing. It should be decreasing. There should never be a chance that that number is increasing, but it is, because it's happening every single day. It does not matter about color, ethnicity, education, or economic background, because you can find these horror stories in just about any of those houses. It does not matter. But I think the only way to cure perhaps a small percentage of this is to have these engaging conversations like we're having now. There has to be open and honest dialogue about the individuals who's committing these acts. And we can't keep saying, well, you know, I know this person. I've been knowing this person 20 years. I know they would never do anything like that. And 5 years later, that person's child has come forward to say, this is what my mom was doing. This is what my dad was doing. So I think if we don't have these conversations with ourselves, with us among the professionals, the educators, the students, and then branch out to the parents, and then have them to talk to their children, I do believe that 70% is going to be a lot higher in the next 5 years. And that's just absolutely ridiculous, because a lot of these women, they are the healers of the community. We need them out here more than we need them in prison. We need more educators. We need more doctors. We need more engineers. We need more lawyers. And we cannot get that if so many of our little girls and our boys are being broken, are being damaged because of this type of abuse. And as they continue to grow, they have no idea how to control the chaos that's continuing to spin in their minds. So before I go on, because I can talk about this forever, but I know you all don't want to be on this call forever. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? I'm an open book, so you can ask me whatever. I promise. I won't be offended, and I'm just gonna tell you the truth. Anybody?
So, Dr. Munroe, this is Tate. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, sorry, I had to leave my office. I'm in the car, but I am so moved by your story, and you are such a storyteller because the way that you explained everything from your childhood up to your graduation of your degrees, you took us there. I was able to see it. I'm curious to know, because I am a faith-based individual, and in the times that we're living in, when we just experienced the verdict of Derek Chauvin, and then now we had a little glimpse of glory, but then is shadowed by this gloomy weather now that we see with the Micaiah killing in Ohio, and things like that. And so I'm just curious to know that. I'm curious to really ask, throughout all the times that you were going through the abuse and times that you were on the streets, and it seems like you have faith, like, where did it come from and how were you sustained by God? Because it seemed like your faith is strong. And so I'm just wondering, like, when you are going through hard times and dark times, like, what kept you going? What kept you sane?
Well, I was mad at God for a very long time. I was mad because I thought, if you're God, and if you are everything I've always been taught, how do you allow this to happen to me? How do you allow that? You had to have been there. And if my mother was not going to protect me, you were supposed to do that. I was angry for a very long time. And I'll tell you, one particular incident that sealed that anger with God for me is when I was in my mom's home, and I was about 12, and I was in the bedroom with my sister. We slept in the same room, and everyone was supposed to be asleep. And my face was against the wall. I was facing the wall. But I heard something behind me. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know who it was, but I was so scared. I just couldn't turn around, but I knew something was behind me. My sister sneaked out of the room to get our mom. My mom came in the room and she turned the light on. As she turned the light on, that gave me the courage to turn around, okay? When I turned around, my uncle was standing there, totally nude, and the sound I heard, that was my uncle masturbating over me. When I turned around, his semen just hit my face. It was in my hair. Just as my mom turned that light on, I turned around because I thought I was safe. My mom watched this, and a child mind, I'm thinking, she's gonna kill this man because she's here. She see it. He can't talk his way out of it, and I don't have to explain what happened. She's right here in the room. My mother told him to leave her house. She called a cab for him. She told me some choice words and demanded that I go wash my hair and my face and go back to bed. And that was the end of it. And that's when I just felt God isn't here. He can't, you You gave me to her to protect me, but she didn't. So clearly something was supposed to happen where there's evidence for me that you exist. And it didn't happen. And after other experiences like that, I gave up. I gave up on it because I was mad. But when I found out I was pregnant, and I was so scared but excited that I'm not going to be by myself anymore, I made a deal. And I said, God, if you help me out of this situation so that my daughter will not have to be on the street, I will spend every waking moment helping another girl who's in my situation. And I kept praying that prayer. And I was still mad at God. I was still disappointed that he allowed me to go through that pain, those experiences, a child knowing I can't fight a grown man. I couldn't fight those men. But I had to give up that anger. I had to, because I had nothing left. 2 of my friends were dead. I had nothing. I had nowhere to live. I'm in the same clothes over and over. My hair looked a mess. My hair was falling out. I didn't have food on a consistent basis. I had nowhere to lay my head that was safe. I had absolutely nothing. When you're that down and out, and I like to tell my parents, when you're that low, the only direction for you at that point is up. You can't go any lower than that. And if you just look up and just for a moment, just give up and give in, God will be there. And I know people say, well, God told me to tell you. I always say hush, because I got the same ears you got. And if God told you something about me, he gonna tell me first, so stop. But I had to give up. I had to just, because I had nowhere else to go. And this little child was growing inside of me. So I had to depend on God. I had to fall on my knees, all the way on my face, and say, God, forgive me. Because you were not lost, I was. You did not forsaken me. I gave up on you because I misunderstood who God is and what his power does. So once again, you're just in my situation. I'll just say for me, once you're just down that far, and if you truly about living, you got to look up. And if you do that with a clear head and an open heart, God is going to work all of his miracles through you. Now, things did not get better for me the next day. I don't want anyone to think that. It didn't get better for me the next month. It didn't. But my God, people told me I was mentally retarded. And one of the courses that I teach here is statistics and criminal justice research. So if that is not God, then I don't know what this is, because everything I am today, everything that I've been blessed to do, it's not because of me. I don't believe it's because of the work that I've been putting in. I think it was because of the prayers that I put in. And then me honoring what I told God I was going to do. I love having these type of conversations. I love going into the jails, into the prisons, and talking with both men and women about what you can accomplish if you give up being angry. I love it. I love it because I'm a living testimony of that. And I don't think anything could happen to make me change that belief now. I don't, and we go through life issues. We all do. We're going to continue to do so as long as we're alive. But again, God is ever present. At least he is in my life. And I'm going to keep doing exactly what I told him that I would do. I'm going to keep helping young women if they are willing to accept my help. I'm going to help young men if they're willing to accept my help. I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to keep researching. I'm going to keep telling my story. I'm going to keep fighting for those women in those prisons that keep being raped. I'm going to be the one that raise hell in every meeting that I attend, because somebody has to speak up and tell the truth. And I just happen to think that chick is me. I'm going to do all of that.
Dr. Munroe, real quick, I've listened in the, I'm a little old school, even though I'm very young, but I hearken the words of some of the old saints who would say, I believe I can run on and see what the end is going to be, because I am encouraged. If you didn't come to this school for anybody, you came for me, seriously. And I just want to really thank you, and for really being so vulnerable, but also very transparent. And just real quick, as a practitioner in higher education, we're surrounded around so many young people from different cultures, different backgrounds, and things like that. And I know there's a lot of students who may be around us in our classrooms, in our offices, or wherever, that may be suffering in silence. Like, do you have any tips or any encouragement on how to provide or how to create a space that we often say create these safe spaces, right? But often some of our spaces, even on campus, aren't safe, right? But as it pertains to those who may be dealing with sexual abuse, or maybe dealing with some type of abuse back at home, or grew up, in a violent or abusive home, how do we create environments in our spaces on campus that will allow them to be vulnerable, or just to be safe and to feel comfortable enough to feel they can share, or that they can find resources? Because oftentimes I know, as a Black man working in higher education, that majority of my students are women, right? I understand that men and women are suffering and can be sexually abused, or relationally abused and things like that. But often I feel that it's hard for me to really talk or to relate to a woman or a female due to just my maleness, right? And so I'm just wondering if you have any type of encouragement or just advice on how to create spaces that are safe for our students.
I think the safest space would be a space to simply allow the person to feel. That's very important. And the reason why I say that is because so many times we will listen in an attempt to provide support, and we'll say, well, that happened so long ago. You're still allowing that to bother you? Girl, you should have been over that 10 years ago. But what you're doing is you are deciding when that person should be finished with their hurt. You are deciding when that person should put away their pain. When we can't do that, I tell people, and people say, well, you're so strong, Dr. Munroe, you're a strong Black woman. And I just reject that statement so much. To me, it's a negative statement. It is. Because I'm not strong, I'm grown. That's what I am. I go to work because I want to eat, right? So you do things that you're supposed to do when you're grown. It doesn't have anything to do with being strong. But if that person needs space to cry, let them cry. If they're angry and they don't want to say anything, allow them the space to be silent. Because a lot of times what we're doing is we're taking away the humanity from being human. Every life experience is going to come with a certain set of emotions. And we have to allow people to simply feel. People have a right to be mad about something. If you have an issue with being molested as a child and you 25 and you still mad, you have a right to still be mad because that happened to you. Let people feel whatever emotion comes with their particular life experience. Because what you're doing is you're allowing them a freedom that they didn't have before. Imagine how many times a child tried to tell a parent and a parent said, be quiet, don't say that again. Stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry for. You're telling that child, shut down your emotions. You don't have a right to feel anything. No matter what happened, you don't have a right to cry. You don't have a right to be mad. You don't have a right to be upset. Imagine feeling that way from down to the ground. Now you're a teenager. Now you're a young adult. You're in college. And you're still angry, but you don't know what to do with that anger. You can't say anything because you've been trained not to. And you know what we usually say about kids, Mr. Brooks? Children should be seen, not heard. Again, those are terrible messages that we're putting into the souls of our children. So if you want to create a safe space, create a space that will simply allow students to feel. Simply let them be. If they want to just sit there and cry, let them, because that might be the very first space they've ever been allowed to just sit and let it out. You have the ability to create a space of peace because that's what they need. And it's not so much that physical, right? It's the mental peace that they need. That's what's missing because that's where everything starts. It starts right here in the mind. You think about that over and over and over. What happened to me? 10 years old, I'm thinking about it. 15 years old, I'm still thinking about it. 30, I'm still thinking about it. It's that mental peace that so many kids don't have. But if you have the ability to create that space, I'm telling you, that should be your number one priority. This is a space for you to simply feel. This is a space for you to be. Whatever be is that day, if you just mad, be that. If you sad, be that. But no, I'm here for you. And there's no rush for you to heal. Just know you're not by yourself. I'm not going to claim I know what you're going through. But what I do know for sure is what it's like to have somebody by my side. And that's exactly what I'm going to do for you. If you can create a space such as that, Mr. Brooks, you will be a rock star. Because that's a lot of work.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, anything?
Mayani, I saw you're off of mute. Did you want to say anything?
I came in a little late, so I probably missed a lot. But I just want to say that I think everything you said was so inspiring, and I could definitely use this whenever I go through life, and if I meet someone that is going through hard times, I can use what you're saying as a guide for me. Because I'm also a psychology major, and I'll probably do counseling as well. So I think this would be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate your comments.
Well, we're right at 7:30. Is there anything else from anyone?
I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciated hearing your story. So I wanted to say thank you. I'm kind of curious about your daughter, like how she's doing and how old she is.
Okay, so my daughter is just as fabulous as I am. She really is. I'm telling you, my daughter, I'm telling you, she's the oldest young person I know She acts like an old lady. She has no Facebook, no Twitter. She's an old lady. I don't know, but my daughter is 32 years old. She's married. They have two beautiful girls. They actually just bought their first home. Yeah, my daughter's a superstar. She is. She graduated from St. Leo University in Tampa, Florida. That's where they reside. And she works for the banking industry, both she and her husband. And she does taxes, so she has her own little side hustle where she, she's certified to do taxes, and numbers is her thing, right? She was a part of this group called Mu Alpha Theta. It's a math group, and I'm telling you, she's always been academically on top of her game. I mean, she was in pre-IB, that's an international baccalaureate program in middle school, and then in high school she was in the full IB program, which your first 2 years of high school you're doing high school work, and your last 2 years of high school you're doing college work. So I'm telling you, you would not think that she is the child of a mother who was in special ed. I'm telling you, I'm very proud of my daughter. She does everything that I do. She dressed the way that I do. It's amazing to know that because I would ask her, why do you dress like that? And she was like, well, Mom, you always wear suits. And I was like, yeah, but I was going to work. And she was like, well, I'm going to work. Because I still see her as a little kid, right? But she watched everything I did. She did. She was right there. I was just as transparent with my daughter as I, have been with all of you this evening. I didn't hide anything from my baby. And I just wanted to make sure I gave her different messages. I never said, you're here just to be seen and not heard. No, I needed her to talk to me. I never told this weird thing I hear parents say, I'm your parent, I'm not your friend. No, I wanted to be my daughter's first friend because I wanted her to understand what friendship really looked like. So, and we never had a problem with disrespect. My daughter, she does well, but again, God laid his hand on my child, and I will forever be grateful to him. If for nothing else, he did well with her. He did very well with her, and I'm very proud. If God could have promised me 5 more children just like Ariel, I would have had 5 more, but he ain't talked to me about that, Camille, so I kept it at 1.
Thank you. That's a great story.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Dr. Munroe, Camille is our strongest co-conspirator in our DI work here. She's our strongest ally and advocate. She's been my partner here at Marymount and leading so much of this work. So happy to have her and so glad that you all can meet each other because Dr. Munroe, my person at Virginia Union.
Yep, that's right. From day one, that's right. Are there any more questions?
And what are you, since you're chair, are you teaching still now or?
So I was teaching my stats course. I teach that every semester. And the course that I created for the department, which is called Childhood Trauma and Adult Criminality, a Black Perspective, I only teach that during the fall. Okay. So this semester I was just teaching the 1 course, but last semester I was teaching 7 courses. So I needed a break this semester because that was unheard of, and that will never happen again in life. So I was able to take a break this semester, a much needed break. And then I was writing, for my book chapter too. So I needed that space to make sure I completed that particular project, and it's completed. we'll actually be using the textbook in our juvenile justice course in the fall. Yeah.
Well, thank you. You know, we're a little bit after 7:30, so I'm appreciative of everyone joining the call today. Dr. Munroe, I don't think, do you post on Instagram much? I don't know if we can follow you there, but
you know, I've been thinking about it. And I don't know why I'm talking about my daughter, because really, look, I have a Facebook page and I created that to promote my books, but I'm hearing about this other stuff. Instagram, Twitter, and someone mentioned another one. I can't keep up with it. Look, Brooke, you saw my phone.
I know.
I mean, really. So I have to get better.
Well, thank you. And thank you to Tate. I know that he's driving, but he's our Associate Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and he leads all of our programming efforts. And so happy that, you know, he was able to join and lead our welcome and conversation today. So
absolutely, absolutely. Well, it has been a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this day. I've been very excited about it, and I knew it would be awesome, and it definitely was. And, you know, if you need me for anything, any of you, Brooke has my contact information. Please feel free to reach out if, you know, you need me to talk with the group or just talk with you individually. I promise you, I will always have time for any of you. So it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share. And I'm always available if you need me in the future.